Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our Meet the Artist series here at Moraine Valley Community College's Fine and Performing Arts Center. Well, we're not there, we're in my kitchen, but you get the gist of it. My name is Tommy Hensel, and I am the director of the Fine and Performing Arts Center at Moraine Valley. We are located in Palos Hills, Illinois, which is a southwest suburb of Chicago. Our normal Meet the Artist series is every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central, but we're having a special Thursday night edition because we have a special guest tonight that has a show coming up in about a week and a half, and I really wanted to make sure that we had a chance to not only interview Mark, but also to give them a plug for this amazing performance. So we'll talk at great length about that show later on in the broadcast. And I had planned to interview Mark later on in August anyway, so we just kind of moved things around. So we're doing this one-off special Thursday night Meet the Artist. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate all of the support that we get from all of you. As you know, back in March, we closed our theater like everybody did, and we haven't been able to do any performances. So we decided that we would reach out to artists who have been on our stage in the past few seasons and find out if they'd be interested in coming online and just joining me for a chat. And as I've said many times, in kind of full disclosure, I'm only picking people that I like, that are friends of mine, that I really want to spend time talking to. And because I've been quarantining alone in this apartment for 18 weeks, it's awesome to be able to connect with these friends that normally I would spend time with in person as often as possible. So having said that, I'm excited to welcome to the broadcast studio tonight, one of my best friends in Chicago, the artistic director of the Chicago Tap Theater, Mark Yonally. So I'm clicking you. There you are, Mark.
Hello.
Hey. So yay, so thanks for joining me tonight. I'm excited to have you on the broadcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And so accurate. It's I still remember our very first conversation we ever had. You have truly been such a lovely friend to both my wife and I since we've been here. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for some mentorship you've given us over the years. I think you've taught us a lot about the business that we're in. And thanks for having me here tonight. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I looked up online because I have an archive of all of my season brochures, because I was trying to remember the first time that Chicago Tap Theater appeared on our stage, and it was in April of 2011. So it was 9 years ago was the first time, and you've been there several times since. I think a couple of times with the Christmas show. But certainly with other shows. So, you know, you're like many Chicago dance companies, I love to try to support as much Chicago dance as possible. But I always kind of skew in the direction of the people who are also my friends. So, like Melissa Thodos with her company for so many years, and Frank Chavez with River North, and you with the Chicago Tap Theater. So tonight, I definitely want to just have our normal conversation that I would have with an artist, but also want to make sure that we spend time towards the middle or end of the broadcast to talk about the great performance you have coming up in a couple of weeks, because I think it's really innovative and interesting during this very strange time that we are all currently in. But before we go into that more specific, one of the things that I've been asking everyone, and it's kind of become probably my only standard interview question that I've asked everyone is the sort of, how did it start for you? Like when you were a kid and you first started getting interested in life and in things, when was it that dance or theater or the arts sort of crossed your radar screen, and when did you really figure out, hey, this is what I want to do?
I was very lucky that I was born into a family that loved the arts. I had an older brother who was a budding filmmaker when I was a child. My father would do community theater. My mom would do costuming. Even from a very young age, we would all work at the Renaissance Festival in Kansas City together. I would say I had a lot of different experiences than most kids typically. My 8th birthday, we were all extras together in a film directed by Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek II and a lot of other films. So I was kind of raised into it, but also I was a very sick child, actually. I guess I had quite bad allergies and asthma and was in and out of the hospital. And apparently when I was 3 years old, my parents had a very forward-thinking doctor that they were kind of working with. And he said to them, the best thing you could do for the future health of this young kid is to get him in dance. He needs to be active. I couldn't really do anything that required a lot of running because my asthma and allergies were so bad at that age. Mm-hmm. But, you know, dance is kind of a perfect anaerobic activity, especially when you're a little one, because you're listening and watching the teacher, then you do something for a little bit, and then you watch, and then you do something. And I always enjoyed it. I always enjoyed being on the stage. It was something that I think I took to right away. Probably the biggest formative experience as a performer is that when I was 8 years old, I was invited to be a part of a performing group in Kansas City called Gangbusters. And it was 3 young boys and 1 young girl. And we were a nostalgia act. This would have been 1981. And we did songs and dances of the 1930s and 40s.
Oh my gosh.
And we worked at a local hotel that had a restaurant called Harlow's, named after Jean Harlow. And every Friday and Saturday, we did 4 shows a night, 20 minutes per show. And it was a paid gig, and it lasted 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, I was a steady working performer from a very young age. And I was also a performer that understood that if you were a professional and worked hard, you were compensated, you were paid. And one of the things that I think was the best thing about that job is that in addition to all these great, you know, I learned the Great American Songbook when I was 8 years old, right? Because most of the songs we were doing were Gershwin and Ellington and Porter.
Now, were you singing as well as dancing?
We were, yeah. Believe it or not, I used to actually be able to sing.
Okay.
I don't know when that, you know, at a certain point my voice changed and I kind of decided singing might not really be for me. But as a kid, I did it all the time and I loved it. Funny kind of thing, we used to do a lot of medleys. So, you know, up until about young adulthood, when I really started digging deeper into the Great American Songbook more, I knew 8 to 16 bars of maybe 150 songs. There, so many times as an adult, I would hear a song and I'd hear the beginning and I'd think, oh, I've never heard this standard before. And then I would get to the chorus and I'd be like, oh, I know these 4 lines of the song because it was in a medley we did.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other thing that was great about that job is after each 20-minute show, part of the job was that the 4 kids were expected to walk from table to table and mingle with the audience and mingle with the diners. And it taught me at a very young age the importance of being comfortable talking to people, to be able to kind of engage people and ask them about their day, to learn how to take both praise and criticism in a generous, kind way. I remember I used to be the first year. I remember every time people would say, "Oh my, you're so young and so talented," I would freeze and I would feel so kind of nervous. I remember asking my parents, you know, what do I say when people say that? And they very patiently explained that you say thank you.
Yes.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
But it did. It kind of gave me a comfortability with the public and with the audience and an understanding that when you perform, you really do have the potential to make people's day a little bit better, maybe make it a little bit brighter. Because people would say that to us all the time, right? These adults seeing these little 9-year-old moppets singing, you know, Louis Armstrong tunes and things like that. And I think that's part of what instilled the love for me, was understanding that what we do on that stage really could have a very real impact on the people watching. And I think that was the hook.
Yeah. So how did tap dance then become sort of the focus? I mean, because many of us started like I did, you know, as singers or, you know, as doing theater when we were kids. but obviously we've all kind of merged into focuses, and yours obviously is tap dance.
It's interesting. So I've been doing these interviews for the past 4 months, right, since the pandemic began. Twice a week, I've been interviewing well-known tap dancers on my own little kind of internet show.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask each one of them that question. I ask each of them, why tap dance? Why did you fall in love with tap dance? And as I've heard their answers, I've realized that a couple resonate with me more. And I think for me, the biggest thing is it was the one thing that I was legitimately good at. I wish I could say it was something profound. I wish I could say that it was some deeper thing. But, in all honesty, I studied every dance form. I took ballet, I took jazz, I did tumbling even. And of course, I sang and I acted. But tap dancing, I around 8 years old, I took my first private class. And in that private class, a lot of things that had been kind of difficult in the past, all of a sudden started to make sense because it was just a teacher in a room, patiently explaining everything. And because I started to understand it, I started to have a little confidence in class, and I started trying a little more. And because I was trying more, I gained more confidence and got a little better at it. And it ended up becoming a virtuous circle. So that by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I had something that I really was beginning to feel like an understanding of. And I think when I began to understand it deeper is when I really started to love tap dance as an adult, right? I began to understand the potential to make music with my feet, the ability to really be a jazz musician, which I think was something that I always loved jazz music and kind of had wished I could play a more traditional instrument better. But I think when I had that realization that being a tap dancer really does make one a jazz musician, and that the best tap dancers do know their music theory and they do know their music history and their jazz history. So I think that was a big part of it. Tap dance I realized I could do it, and then once I could really do it, I understood why it was such a beautiful art form.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the jazz piece, because that's actually the first time that I ever saw you perform was at the Green Mill. You were doing like improvisational tap with a jazz combo live, and it was the first time that I had ever seen like improv tap in a live format like that. And and the sound and also the movement really becomes an integrated part of that whole jazz experience. And I just, it kind of opened my eyes to the concept of live. I've always liked live music with dance anyway, but it really reiterated to me how fantastic it is to have live music and live dance together and not canned music, so
yeah.
But that was awesome. So obviously, you got the bug when you were really young and you were studying. So what was kind of your training trajectory? How did you continue your training moving through college and into adulthood?
Well, I will tell you, I was gifted with the single, perhaps most important thing that a child can be gifted with who loves the arts: parents who supported me.
Amen.
Yes. What a difference that made, right? Not only, of course, were my parents paying for me to take all the dance lessons, but of course, then occasionally I would actually be in shows with my father and with my brother, and my mom would be making the costumes. But I think, I grew up in a local dance studio in a suburb of Kansas City called Overland Park. Luckily, the studio that my parents chose for me happened to really be a studio that focused in tap dance and really had a great program. And to this day, 40 years later, they still have a great tap program. I actually go back and teach there now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and they're still one of the best tap studios in the Midwest, I would argue. And I think that, having that kind of foundation set me up. And then when I turned around 13 or 14, the tap renaissance was really becoming a thing in this country.
Yeah.
And there were two things happening kind of simultaneously. One, you began to see Gregory Hines, young Savion Glover was becoming a known entity. The movie Tap came out, the movie White Nights. So on the one hand, you had that part of tap dance. And in addition, those movies were featuring a lot of the old legends, right? The Jimmy Slides and the Buster Browns and the Nicholas Brothers and Steve Condos and people like that. But also at the same time in the 1980s, you had the birth of concert tap dance in this country. And there was this explosion of innovation and new approaches to this art form, primarily being driven by women who were creating the first tap dance companies. So I think these two twin stories were happening throughout the 80s. And again, thanks to my parents, I was lucky enough to be able to go to tap festivals and study with these people.
Wow.
So, I'd see a movie with, or I'd see the Cosby episode with Sandman Sims, or I'd see the movie Tap with Fayard Nicholas and Jimmy Slide and all those guys. And then I'd be able to go to a tap festival and actually meet them and hang out with them and take class with them. And I think that exposure to true legends of this art form and being able to be around them and be encouraged by them. I don't know how anybody could have that opportunity and not fall in love with the art form.
Yeah.
It really was a special time in the tap world because we still had all the old legends. The kind of women of the tap renaissance were in their prime. They were creating all this new work. And
so people like Brenda Buffalino, that group of people. Yeah.
Yes, Brenda Buffalino, Heather Cornell, Lynn Dally. And just as a side note, one of the few silver linings of this pandemic is that through like the program that I've been doing online twice a week, I've now been interviewing people like Heather Cornell and Brenda Buffalino, and some of the original cast of Bring Into Noise, Bring Into Funk. Okay. So a lot of these people that really influenced me and inspired me, I'm now able to have a platform to present them to the public that maybe doesn't know them as well. And what a gift.
So was that when you decided to go off to college, was that your focus? Like, I'm going to study tap?
Originally, I thought I was going to be a journalism major. That had always been kind of another passion of mine. I think, this would have been 93. And even then, once I started a journalism program in college, I think it became apparent to me right away that it didn't necessarily seem like a very sustainable career at that point. Oddly enough, tap dance felt a little more sustainable than journalism.
Like cognitive dissonance happening here.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, and
I get it.
I knew it's what I wanted to do, right? But I went to college with that idea in my head of do something practical. You'll always tap dance, but
yeah.
But after a couple years, I was just no. I want a dance degree. It's what I want to do. I changed colleges, went to the University of New Mexico to study and dance with Bill Evans and work in the Bill Evans Dance Company.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I danced in the Bill Evans Dance Company for 7 years, and Bill gave me this great opportunity. If you come to Albuquerque to go to the university, I'll put you in my company. You can choreograph, you'll tour, you'll get paid. And every semester you're here, I will give you 3 credits of independent study.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an awesome deal. Yeah.
So for 6 semesters, I had an hour and a half every week, just me and Bill Evans in a room, giving me knowledge, sharing his experience. So I definitely am the beneficiary of amazing generosity.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for those people who are watching tonight who don't know some of these names, you need to go look them up because these are iconic people in the dance world in general, but particularly in the tap and percussive dance world. People. I worked in the 90s. I had a chance to work with Drika Overton pretty closely in New Hampshire, and she had worked with Brenda Buffalino as well, and was part of that female renaissance in the tap dance world.
Yes.
Tap was actually, I've never been a great dancer, but the one dance form that I was the best at of all of them was tap. And it was because of the same reason that you had. I decided to take private lessons in addition to the class because I'm a slow learner with dance. I'm a very methodical, slow learner. And her name was Pat Spears, I remember, in Columbia, South Carolina. And she was so patient because she would help break it down into tiny little elements for me so that I could wrap my brain around it and then get it into my body, because I've never been good at auditions because I can't get it instantly and do it. So that's awesome. So after your Bill Evans experience, did you stay with the company after college? Then obviously you did for years.
I did, yeah. You know, if he had a gig coming up, he would fly me back to Albuquerque or wherever the gig was. And you know, even as recently as 3 years ago, he has a tradition of doing a show on his birthday every year. And a few years ago, I went out and tap danced with him, and I think it was his maybe 77th birthday.
Nice.
And he is still doing modern and tap dance, still gets every sound when he tap dances, is still working at a virtuosic level. He has not slowed down a bit. I mean, he is still, of course, the same personality that I fell in love with. I mean, he's just an incredible person.
Yep.
But yeah, he is still out there like killing it.
Cool. So what? How did you get to Chicago? How did you get from Albuquerque to Chicago?
So I had a brief detour. I lived in Oklahoma City for 3 months. You know, when I graduated college, I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do, right? Yeah. I didn't know what I was going to do. And it's funny because there was 1 week, it was maybe 2 weeks before graduation. And I remember my plan at that point, I was like, well, I have no plan. I'll just stay in Albuquerque and get my master's. Yeah, why not? I'm here. I like it here. And within a week, I got 2 job offers. I got a cold call out of the blue from Jo Rowan, the head of the dance department at Oklahoma City University. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, Mark, we want to add rhythm tap to our curriculum. They've always had an amazing commercial dance program there. But she said, we want to offer rhythm tap. Do you want to come here and you can help write the syllabus? You can create the program. We will, even though you only have your bachelor's, we will give you a full professor load. You'll be paid as a full-time professor.
Wow.
I was 25. I had blue hair. And I thought, well, okay, that's a pretty good offer. And then that same week, I got an offer to dance in a concert tap dance company in Chicago called ETC. And that company had been here for quite a while. It was the oldest company in Chicago, tap company. Historically, it had a lot of great dancers in the company. Jay Fagan was in that company, Sarah Savelli, you know, just top-notch talent. And I had actually gotten the offer for the company first and said yes. And literally 2 days later, got the phone call from Oklahoma City University. And I thought, you know, a teaching position at a university straight out of college is not something I should turn down. Right?
It's rare. It's rare.
It's a resume builder, right? And you know, like in the dance world, like you want to build that resume and you want to get experience. And so I took that job. I talked to the artistic director of ETC. I said, can I delay my contract to January? And he said, no problem. And I called Joe and I accepted the position. I'd never been to Oklahoma City in my life. I moved there, I think 3 days before school started. And boy, was I knee deep in academia. You know, all of a sudden I was going to faculty meetings and doing the whole thing.
Yeah, I know it well.
I know you do. Boy, it's a whole thing. I had to go to the graduation ceremony and wear the robes and all that. I felt so awkward. I had just graduated from college, right? And I related so much better to the students than the other professors who were all in their 30s and 40s and 50s and had established lives. But because I was brand new to this job, of course, I was so by the book, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't hang out with any of the students. And the faculty were much older and already had established lives there. So on the one hand, I had such a worthwhile experience creating this program, teaching full-time. I mean, it was a full load. I was teaching my little booty off. But on the other hand, it was lonely, lonely, lonely. You know, my birthday was maybe 2 weeks after I moved there, and I didn't have a single person to celebrate with. Nobody even wished me happy birthday. I remember, like, I sat at home by myself in my little apartment eating my dinner. So it was kind of a tough period, but I got to work with literally some of the most elite young dancers in the country. I mean, Oklahoma City University, they turn out more dancers on Broadway than any university in this country.
Wow.
And I dare you to look at any program for a Broadway show that has dance
Mm-hmm.
and look at their credits and not find at least 3 or 4 people that graduated from there.
Yeah.
Not only do they have an amazing dance program, but they have a whole musical theater program. Kristen Chenoweth graduated from there.
Yeah.
Andy O'Hara, is that the right name? What is her name?
Oh no, I know who you mean, but yeah.
You know, so yeah, they put out people that work. People graduate from there. They go to New York. They get jobs. You know, I taught Chip Abbott, who since graduating has now been like a dance captain for Broadway shows. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I worked with all these people that graduated and went out and had careers as professional dancers. So it was such an honor to work there. That being said, Oklahoma City was not the city for me. It was quite a wake-up call coming from Kansas City, which you'd think, you know, 2 Midwestern cities, very similar. Oh, no.
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 I've been to both. You're right.
Yeah. You know, the funniest thing I remember about Oklahoma City, first thing I did when I moved there was I looked for a jazz club because I wanted to get gigs performing with jazz bands like I had been doing in Kansas City. There was not a single jazz club in the entire city at that time. Now, this would have been in '99, so that might have changed by now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, you know, one of the classes I was teaching was very specifically a jazz tap class where we worked on improvisation and music theory. And I wanted, as kind of a culminating project, I wanted to take them all to a jazz club to tap dance.
Mm-hmm.
But there were no jazz clubs. So I found the next best thing. What Oklahoma City did have was a biker blues bar. So I took all these sweet, sheltered Oklahoma City kids to this biker blues bar, and we jammed with the blues band, and the bikers in their leather watched and clapped, were very polite.
Mm-hmm.
But it, you know, I was happy. I did my 3 months, my 1 semester, put it on my resume, moved to Chicago, never looked back. Just fell in love with Chicago.
Yeah, I think we all had those moments in our career where we, you know, I'm glad I did it. It was a growth experience, and moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah.
So you get to Chicago and you're with the dance company there. So how did the Chicago Tap Theater come to be? So you obviously started as a dancer in a company in Chicago, and then obviously not too long after that, because you were celebrating 15?
Actually, we're coming up on 18 years.
18. So not too long after that, you must have founded this company. So talk to me about how that happened.
I will. You know, so the company that I moved here to dance with was an extraordinary company with great dancers. They had turnover right when I moved here. Literally, my first rehearsal, the artistic director, who was the main reason I originally took the gig, because I knew him. He was a great teacher. I knew I would learn a lot. He announces in the first rehearsal that he's accepted a job in Nashville and is moving. And I literally had just moved here. Like, I'd uprooted my life and my teaching job and all that. So I was like, oh no. Luckily, one of the dancers took over as AD. She did a lovely job. But it became apparent to me, you know, the way the company was structured, it wasn't really about giving the dancers in the company an opportunity to choreograph, which I totally understand, right? That's not the model for most dance companies.
No.
But meanwhile, I was a young dancer that did want to choreograph. And I came out of the Bill Evans company where I had a lot of opportunity. So I had a very lucky opportunity to live in Paris for a month, thanks to a mentor. And I went and I lived in Paris the January of 2002. It was soon after 9/11 in America. Mm-hmm. And I was living in my mentor's basement. I had my own little kind of bedroom and bathroom and all that. And, you know, I loved Paris. I speak French terribly, but I speak it enough to be understood.
Okay.
And at the end of the month, I was given an opportunity to stay in Paris if I wanted. And I had to really do some thinking and decide, do I want to pick up my life and be French? And the one thing that kept me from taking it was I felt like I wasn't done in Chicago, but I knew it wasn't about the company I was in. And so literally, I think my last week in Paris, I literally did that thing that they tell you to do, but I don't know that many people actually do. I journaled. I journaled like a beast.
I journal every day, so I get it.
It changed my life. I journaled every night. I would write for maybe 2 or 3 hours. And I tried not to put limitations on what I wrote. I really tried to be kind of stream of conscious. And out of the journaling came a few truths, one of which was that I really felt like I had something I wanted to do with tap dance that at that time, I really didn't think anybody else was doing. I really wanted to tell stories through tap dance. And I wanted to tell stories that I thought were relevant to people like me, yeah? I grew up as a film nerd. I grew up as a science fiction, fantasy, horror. A lot of that is definitely the influence of my big brother.
Oh, yeah. But it's I can see that in your work over the years, so yes. For sure.
And nobody was, nobody really tells those stories through dance much at all, let alone through tap dance. And especially 18 years ago. So I said, you know what? I'm going to call all the best tap dancers I know in Chicago, and I'm going to rent a theater, and I'm going to produce a show, and I'm going to see how it goes. At that time, I don't think I had any designs on creating a company yet, but I thought I'm going to try to do a show and see what happens. And I actually called the Athenaeum Theatre and rented one of their lovely little studios. They have little 100-seat, spaces, and it was quite affordable. And I started calling my best advanced adult students and said, hey, I've got this idea to do a show. Do you want to do it? Luckily, every single one of them said yes. I got back into Chicago from Paris, I think February 1st, and we produced our first show May. I can tell you because it's on my wall. May, I'll be right back. May 22nd, we did our first show.
Of 2002?
Of 2002.
Yeah.
And we did, I think, 5 nights of performances. It was like Wednesday through a Sunday. And like I said, it was a 100-seat theater, but we sold out every single performance.
Wow.
Yeah. And people liked it. People had a good time. And, we weren't a nonprofit or anything. I remember I literally paid my dancers with like a $100 bill, right? Like gangster style.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that one of the nights of our show was May 25th, which is National Tap Dance Day. So I was able to invite colleagues of mine, ETC, the company I'd left, and a very young Mad Rhythms that had just started, great local Chicago tap company. Mm-hmm. Rhythm Is, which at that time was my favorite tap company. It was an all-female tap company. And so on that day, they all came, and I realized that not only could I produce shows, but I could get buy-in. I could get other talented people to come, and I could have an opportunity to present their work. And I know that you know the joy of presenting people that you believe in.
Yes.
And I got that little taste of it. And I think that gave me the producer bug. And I think that honestly might have been one of the main things that made me want to start a company, was to have a platform to present incredibly talented people to the public, as well as then, of course, have a vehicle for the work I wanted to create.
Yeah.
But so that was it. We produced that first show, and then we just never stopped. We kept going.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've always been really impressed by your company, and this is why we've booked your company at our theater, and why a lot of people come to see your shows, is you do have the sort of the rep show that you can do, but your focus on narrative storytelling is really unique, because we're used to seeing narrative ballet. the story ballets that we all, Swan Lakes and the Nutcrackers and all that sort of stuff. And so the concept of dance telling a story is not new, but the concept of tap dance telling a story is a really innovative thing, I think, because most of us growing up in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, you look at tap dance and it's either integrated into a Broadway show, like Dames at Sea, let's tap a lot, and then sing and tap and leave the stage, or it's one-off, really interesting, but one-off numbers, in a repertory situation. So a choreographer creates a 5-minute piece or a 3-minute piece or whatever, but there's no string tying all those together. And so I'm kind of intrigued by what was the impulse for the narrative piece, because that makes you really unique in the tap world, I think.
Well, thank you. It's hard, I think, for a lot of people to remember, but 18 years ago, tap dance was still kind of a marginalized dance form. I mean, it still is in some ways.
Yeah.
Certainly academically it is. But 18 years ago, you didn't see tap very much as part of concert dance series. You didn't see tap dance much presented in major venues. And I don't know that there's necessarily a huge audience, right? There have been a lot of people that have been doing some serious work to build audiences for tap. But I think for me, part of what I had always thought was that people love stories. Yeah, I think that was part of again, my love of cinema growing up, as well as I've always been an inveterate reader. I'm a very fast reader, and I'll go book after book after book. And I think I had thought that if one could take the beauty and rhythm and musical sophistication of tap dance and marry that with then maybe actually getting people emotionally invested in characters and in character arcs, obstacles, overcoming them, victories, disasters, that if one could really marry those two things, one might be able to bring new people into tap dance. It might be a way to get people that normally wouldn't see a tap show to check it out. And I'm quite proud of the fact that I think of all the dance companies in Chicago, I would say the two that maybe try the hardest and are quite often successful at bringing non-dance audiences to see dance are Chicago Dance Crash and us. Yep. And I think it's interesting because Dance Crash started at the same time as that we did. Mm-hmm. And right away, we felt a kinship. I think we fell in love with each other and we realized that each other's companies were trying to do similar things. And I think, part of why we both do what we do is I think we both realized that if dance were going to thrive, it had to bring in new audiences. It couldn't survive on the wealthy old people that went to see the Joffrey at $75 a ticket. Yeah. Right? Those people are important and we love those people and we need those people. But you need the 16-year-olds and you need the college kids with no money and you need we need to be building that next generation of audiences. Or dance is going to really have a hard time taking its rightful place in the cultural life of the city you're in.
Yep, it's so funny that you mentioned Dance Crash because just this morning I sent Jessica a message and said, hey, I would love to have you on this interview show. And she said yes. So I'm not sure when. It'll probably end up being either late August or early September because I'm booked out. But Dance Crash is one of my favorite companies in Chicago as well.
You and me both. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to shift gears really quickly to talk about the, since we're talking about, we talked about earlier, I mentioned the fact that I love live music. And I know one of the things that you made a very strong decision as an artistic director a few years ago to only perform with live musicians. And I think that was a genius decision because the visceral experience of live music with live dance is very, very different than dancing to canned music, as you know. Yeah. So that leads us into the show you have coming up at the Athenaeum Theatre. So talk to me about this show, because I think on many levels it's really innovative to do something like this during this pandemic. So I want to know a little bit about where this came from, what the show is about, and let people who are watching know how do they how do they become involved with this performance?
Sure. Well, first I want to say hi, Jane. I see your comment. And that is lovely. I'm so glad that you feel that way. Please come see our show. So I'm going to back up a little bit. The impetus for this show was a little circuitous, but to me, very important. So 4 months ago, as we all know, the pandemic hit this country very hard. And we, like everybody else, quarantined. My wife, Jennifer, who you're also great friends with, as you know, we moved March 24th. We moved, I think, a week after Chicago locked down.
I know, that was amazing. I don't know how you did it.
Well, it wasn't by choice. It was, we had a lease that was up at the end of March, and we had originally thought, oh, surely with the stay-at-home order, they're not going to want us to move. And our old landlord said, oh, no, we want you to move. Moving's an essential service. You have no excuse not to leave. So we're like, okay. So we were lucky. We found a great apartment, even nicer than the one we were in. We love it. But we had to move. And I had some pretty important decisions to make, right, as an artistic director. Yeah, what do we do as an organization? And, the first thing we did was we said, if we're going to remain relevant, if we're going to remain in front of the public, the only way that we can be in front of people is if we turn all of our attention into becoming an online content company, essentially. And so about 2 weeks into the pandemic, I talked to my marketing director, Leah, who is amazing. And I said to her, look, I want to make a pledge to our public that Chicago Tap Theater is going to put up new, exclusive, original content every single day. And luckily, she is ambitious and said, great, done. What do you want to do? So we did. We started, we basically looked at the days of the week and we said, okay, every Monday we're going to do this. Every Tuesday I do a jazz music history lecture on Facebook Live. Every Wednesday, we offer classes online. Every Thursday, I have an episode of Tea on Tap where I interview important tap dancers. Every Friday, we have an online book club where we read chapters from books about tap dance and have the author of the book actually talk to us. Saturday, we put out a classic piece of choreography. Sunday, we have another episode of Tea on Tap. And it was, I will tell you, it has been exhausting. It has been rewarding. It has, it has been all the things, but it accomplished what we wanted to do. We kept tap dance in front of people. Mm-hmm. And we would have people, we would get emails from South Africa, from France, Ireland, Italy, all over the country of America, South America, saying, your book club is my highlight of the week. It's what I look forward to all week. And that hour is the 1 hour that I forget the reality that I'm living in all the other hours of the week. And I think we realized, not only are we doing something that helping to keep Chicago Tap Theater relevant, but helping to and helping to keep tap dance relevant, but we really are doing something that for certain people, it really is making a difference in their pandemic life. Mm-hmm. And that not only is that something that makes you feel great, but then it becomes a responsibility.
Yes, it does.
Because I'm an avid reader of your blog. And I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about you for a minute.
Sure.
But you started a blog.
Feel free.
Please. So, you started a blog when this pandemic began. I believe it's on The Local Tourist, correct?
Yeah, it's on thelocaltourist.com.
Yes. And it's called Sparkling Isolation. And I'm not going to tell people why it's called that, because I immediately, when I saw you post that the first time, I emailed one of my best friends in France and I said, oh my God, get a load of this. Yeah. She loved it.
It is a French kind of thing.
Yes. But you really have been a chronicler of this period. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, you have allowed people to take 5 minutes every day and kind of reflect on their feelings. And I think quite often realize that they're not the only ones having those feelings.
That's why I've continued to do it, even as I've had days where I was like, oh God, I don't feel like writing anything today. But then that in itself made me say, I need to write about the fact that I didn't want to write today, because I feel like sometimes I write stuff that's intensely personal, but at the same time, I feel like I'm getting feedback from people that some of the things I say, or many of the things that I say, are things that they're thinking, which is why I keep doing it, because I'm like, okay, I'm not alone in my struggle.
Well, and you and I know that the more intensely personal we make our art, some miraculous way, that makes it more universal.
Yeah.
Right? It's that weird thing. I've never quite figured out how that works, but the more narrow and personal it is, somehow it becomes more universal.
Well, it's funny because I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago on my show with Becky Menzie about cabaret, and the fact that one of the things that draws people to cabaret performance, good cabaret performance, like what she does, is that it's intensely personal, because it's usually in a smaller environment where you can connect directly to the audience, and you're sharing really, even if you're not telling deep personal secrets on stage, you're still sharing your spirit in a very visceral kind of way. And audiences get that. They respond to that. Even if they don't know that they're responding to it, they will. The same way that on the other side, if a performer is disconnected and phoning it in, or doesn't like the audience picks that up. Even if there's no moment where they say anything, you feel that vibe. And my friend Chris Valillo is here watching us tonight. He put a nice comment up about this. Chris is a performer who does a tremendous lot of work in many different size venues, but smaller venues very often. And so he gets that as much as the rest of us do.
Yeah.
So going back to your to the show, The Athenaeum. So tell me about this show.
Well, so here's the thing. We were doing all these activities, and what I kind of realized two things. One, when one is the director of a company, you actually have two constituencies, right? We're used to, when we write grants, we're used to talking about the public as our constituency, right? Mm-hmm. The people who take class from us, the people who buy tickets, the people who donate. And what I think I really realized the deeper and deeper we got into this pandemic was that as a director of a company, I actually have two constituencies, one being the public, the other being my dancers, mm-hmm. and the artists that we employ. And I realized that even though I felt what we were doing was super worthwhile, and I felt like it was helping a lot of people, that I wasn't necessarily really addressing the people that I felt the deepest commitment to, which are the people who dance for us. So, I kind of thought, well, okay, what is it that they need? What is it that would help the dancers feel like they have a sense of purpose, feel like they have a goal to work towards? And I realized we have to produce a show. And of course, two things become immediately apparent. One, in no way, shape, or form were we going to produce a show unless it was going to be safe. Yeah, we're going to follow. I want to read this too.
Jean's a good friend and a great supporter of the Fine and Performing Arts Center. And you're right, Jean. My glass is almost empty, but we only have another 10 minutes, so I'm good.
So I realized that they needed a show. So we knew we were going to make it safe. And I'll tell you, I know that you, like I, and probably everyone out there, we've all seen these amazingly innovative Zoom concerts or similar things that people are doing from their homes. Mm-hmm. And they're so smart, right? They're figuring out how to take their kitchen or family room and turn it into a performance space. And, you'll see one dance in somebody's living room, and then it'll go to some other dancer in another city. And I love that. And I think it's incredibly valuable and all of that. But I miss seeing dances in theaters. And I felt that there was a responsibility perhaps that we could help fill to create a model for what dance can look like in this time that is both in a theater and yet still completely safe and following all guidelines, and available to the public. So I think about 2.5 months ago, I started talking to my dancers about this and saying, look, we're producing a show. You got to start learning material. And I could tell as soon as they had to be responsible to learn dance again, it was such a relief.
Yeah.
Because it's what we do, right? What is a dancer that isn't learning dances? Yeah, or performing dances. So we started putting the work together. I called my good friend Alan at the Athenaeum and said, hey, would you be willing to host us? And he said, sure. And then I talked to our production team and said, hey, do you think you can make this happen given these constraints and using this kind of technology? And they said, we got it. I called our amazing musical partner. 2 years ago, I finally got up the guts to talk to JC Brooks. And I will just tell anybody out there, if you are not hip to JC Brooks and the Uptown Sound, or now performing under just his own name, JC Brooks, he's on Spotify, Apple Music. He is a performer, songwriter, interpreter par excellence.
He's astonishing.
If there is one thing that I am truly gifted at, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit, I think I might even be more gifted at this than I am doing what I do for a living, i.e. tap dancing. I have always had a remarkable ability to get buy-in from people that I have no business getting buy-in from. Like, I've always been able to bring people together and make things happen that I sit back and look at it and I can't believe the caliber and quality of people that I get to work with. So I called JC Brooks and, he and I, at this point now, we've done many shows together, but I said, hey, I want to create this show. It's going to be entirely virtual, but it's going to be in a real theater. We're going to have costumes. We're going to have lights. We're going to have a live band. What do you think? And he said, great. I got this song I've been working on. What do you think? And it's called 6 Beats Apart. And I heard it and I was like, it's amazing. It's the opener of the show. And the one thing we didn't have was a title. And JC is one of these amazing people. I said, JC, here's what I want to convey with the title. Do you have any ideas? And he said, no. 2 weeks later, I'm talking to him. I said, oh, hey, did you ever think of, a title? And he said, oh, yeah, I thought of something right after we talked, but I didn't really think anything about it. So I said, what is it? And he said, well, how many people do we have in the show? And I said, 15, 11 dancers, 4 musicians. And he said, what do you think? 30 feet together, 6 feet apart.
I love it. I'm going to put the little ticker at the bottom of the screen here that has the title on it.
Thank you. So it is curtain opens, house opens at 2:30. So if you click the link at 2:30, you'll be able to log in. The show proper starts at 3. We are going to have entertainment between 2:30 and 3. At 3 o'clock, the show begins. It'll be over by 4. I'm a huge believer, no matter how engaging a show is online, no one wants to stare at their computer longer than an hour.
No, which is why, I keep these interviews at just under an hour, because I know people get tired. They get Zoom fatigue, although this is StreamYard, not Zoom. But yeah.
Yay. I'll tell you that people can get the link at our website, as you posted, at chicagotaptheater.com. The actual ticket price is $30, which is the fair market value. However, if you click that link, you will notice we have a range of ticket prices. They're all for the same ticket, but you can pay $30, you can pay $25, $20, $15, $10, $5, or you can pay nothing and you will get the exact same link in the exact same show as somebody paying $30. That was incredibly important to us because we know many people are struggling through this period. And one of the things that we said 4 months ago when we began all of our online activities was that everything we do will be available for free. If somebody has been working through this time and they're doing great and they can afford a ticket, maybe they can even donate a little extra to help offset the people who get free tickets. Lovely, thank you, we appreciate it. But my goodness, if you need a free ticket, please take it. That is what it is there for. We know that this is a hard time. We do not want art to only belong to the people that are doing okay right now. So please, please, please take advantage of whatever you need to take. We just want you there to enjoy the show.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm looking at the concept of creating a virtual series in the fall, because we're closed through the end of December. And I worked today actually with College Foundation with the concept of, everything will be free, but we'll put a donation button up there so that people who like dial into our live stream or to whatever content we're streaming have the ability to donate if they want. And we'll let them know exactly where the donation is going and what it's for. But, it is, I said to somebody earlier today, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but no, it was actually to someone else today, is the arts were the first industry to shut down during this pandemic, and we are going to be the last one to come back. Yes. The performing arts, and we're getting pretty much no love from the federal level. People are, I love my restaurant friends. God, I love them. And I review restaurants on the side, but restaurants are getting all the PR right now.
Yes, they are.
And the arts are getting zero. And we are taking a hit in ways that people do not even comprehend, because, in the presenting world, it's not just you as an artist and me as a presenter. There are agents who represent you. Oh, yeah. There are technicians who work backstage. There are companies that supply materials and supplies for performance. There are vendors who rely on theaters, whether they're parking garages or restaurants or whatever. The ripple effect of the arts being closed down is huge. Yes. And it's the personal toll on artists right now, because many of our artist friends, as you know, are gig workers. And gig workers are having a really hard time getting unemployment and all of that. So, I'm just saying to anybody who's out there, please, if you can support the arts, support the arts.
Yes.
We need it. So I'm excited for this show, because one of the things I love about this concept is, and by the way, when you talk to Alan at the Athenaeum, please tell him that I said hello.
I will.
I love Alan. We all know each other. For those of you who are watching this, all of us in this industry, we all over the world, we all really kind of know each other. Yeah. But is the fact that you are in a live theater with live performers. Now, are you going to have a live audience at all? A small audience? Okay,
so
the cameras.
According to current guidelines, and even this, there's a little confusion. Chicago guidelines are you can have up to 50 people per section of theater. So technically, you could have 100 at the Athenaeum. Yep. 50 in the balcony, 50 on the main floor. But Illinois guidelines are that you can have no more than 50 in the theater. And the state technically supersedes the city on restrictions. So, we've thought about it. We had thought about, we could offer just a few tickets at kind of a high price to donors and supporters. However, one of the things we feel acutely is our responsibility to present this in a way that is a model of what we think is safe and what we want other people to follow. There is a show at the Athenaeum on Friday before us that's actually a friend of mine's company. They are going to have 50 people in the audience, and I love that he's going to try it.
Yeah.
We didn't think we were quite ready for it. They will, and I'll tell people, if you love contemporary jazz dance, they're called Inside Chicago. They have a great show. It's going to be Friday night at the Ath. There are 50 tickets available, and they will also be on Vimeo Live, just like we are. We share a production company, so we're good friends. But no, we thought about having a live audience, and we just, at the end of the day, thought, you know what? We want the best seat in the house to be you in front of your computer. And I feel like you might feel the absence of being there more acutely if you knew that there were people able to be there watching. And we like the idea that everyone has the same seat for our show. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what we thought. We thought, and like I say, every piece we do, we will be wearing masks. We are maintaining 6 feet apart from each other at all times. The only person not wearing a mask is our singer. and he is keeping a greater distance from everybody else. The band will be wearing masks. We don't have any reed players or horn players. So our entire crew will be wearing a mask, all the technicians, the camera people. We are following every single guideline. We are in no way, shape, or form trying to skirt the law or see how much we can get away with. We're not interested in that. We are acute believers in science and in what we were going through, and we know the only way we all get through this together is if we all act responsibly. So.
And I feel like it's up to those of us who are in the public eye to lead by example. You know, if when we finally get back to any kind of hybrid or live performances in our theater at Moraine, we're going to do the same thing because it's the right thing to do. And I believe in science too.
Yes.
Science? Really?
Yeah, science is awesome.
Yeah, don't get me started. You and I can have another conversation about my issue with masks right now.
Oh, we know.
I have actually what's kind of cool is that I have, because I work in the theater like you do, I have a lot of friends who are costume designers who have sent me really cool masks. So I have some really awesome masks to wear that when I wear them, people go, I love your mask. Where did you get that? I'm like, oh, there you go. It's the new thing.
I love it. We have a board member's mother who's going to be making everyone in the cast a mask just for the show, so that they're all matching, they're all sharp looking, and they're going to be Chicago themed. They're going to have the Chicago stars on them.
Awesome. I think that's cool. Yeah. So Mark, we're at the end of our time. So I wanted to say, was there anything else that you wanted to bring up that we had not talked about yet tonight?
Yes. And it's incredibly important to me. I really just want to say how thankful I am that we have people in the community like you. Tommy, you are one of the only people I know that are doing live interviews like this, that is going out of their way to highlight artists. We need platforms right now. What you said rang so true with me, that if people are not careful, we're going to come out of this, and the new normal is going to be missing a lot of the arts and culture that they have relied on in the past to give their life meaning, right? The things that help us in our darkest hours, the performances we go see that change our lives, that challenge us, that educate our children. If we don't start prioritizing this, if we don't make a bigger deal to our city, state, federal governments, and if we don't start shining a greater light on the artistic community, we're going to come out of this, and all these big businesses are going to still be there, and people are going to be happy about that. And then they're going to want to go see a show, or they're going to want to go see a concert. And they're going to realize that their favorite dance company is no longer together because they couldn't make it. So I want to thank you for shining a light on artists. I want to thank you for giving a platform. You always have done so much to support the arts. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you. That's, like your parents told you when you were young, just say thank you.
Yes, you brought it back to the beginning.
We did. See, that's how my brain works. I always tell people when I'm doing an extemporaneous lecture that I will go off on a tangent, but I will always come back. I don't know how I do it, but I will do it.
Yeah.
So thank you. And we've got some nice comments from our group watching tonight. So thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. So Mark, I'm going to take you out of the stream temporarily. And when we go offline, stay around, you and I will chat. But thank you so much. And, Maird for your show.
Thank you.
On the 26th, so 3:00, July 26th, Sunday, Athenaeum Theatre. Go to ChicagoTapTheater.com, and theater with an R-E. The way it should be spelled, by the way. Don't get me started on that. ChicagoTapTheater.com. And if you can afford it, please go ahead and buy a ticket and donate to the Tap Theater. So thank you again, Mark. I'm going to take you out of the stream, and we will talk in a few minutes. So thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in tonight. As always, some of you may be watching this later. This is archived on YouTube. So I'm happy that if you're watching it afterwards, please drop us a message. Let us know what you thought. On Tuesday of next week, we resume our normal Tuesday night things, and I'm interviewing a rock and roll icon, Jim Peterik. Many of you know Jim from his creation of the Ides of March back in the late 60s to his work with many bands like Survivor, and he wrote Eye of the Tiger and so many other famous songs. And he happens to be a local resident. He lives in Burr Ridge, and he's from Berwyn, where I am tuning in to you tonight from. So tune in next Tuesday, the whatever day that is, the 21st of July at 7 p.m. Central for my interview with Jim Peterik. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to sign off now and have a great rest of your evening.